A wasp with virus DNA sounds like the fever dream of a supervillain, a mashup of two organisms that most of us would rather not encounter. But evolution doesn't care about your feelings, and natural selection is going to favor bizarre team-ups if there's a reproductive advantage at stake. In this case, that means there's a wasp family out there whose livelihood is so intertwined with the survival of a virus that they partly share a genome. And ironically, this extreme teamwork is all for the sake of being better parasites. The Bzarby's Pin Club is open for subscriptions for the whole month. Sign up by March 20th and the first pin you'll get will be one of these weird little wasps. Mutualism, a symbiotic relationship where both species benefit, is one of the coolest interactions in nature. Whether it's dental work in exchange for a meal or someone to keep an extra eye out while you both forage, cooperation can be awfully nice. And then, way on the other end of the symbiotic spectrum from mutualism, you'll find parasitism, where one organism's success usually comes at a host's expense. But there's also a version of this called parasitoidism. A parasite's host is harmed, sure, but it typically isn't outright killed. A parasitoid, on the other hand, basically uses its host as a dual-purpose incubator and buffet for its young. And the wasp family Braconidae is all about that parasitoid lifestyle. Braconidae is the second largest family of wasps, with over 17,000 recorded species out of an estimated 32 to 42,000 total, and they can be found all over the world. Wasps in this family are mostly solitary and relatively small, typically maxing out at about 1.5 centimeters. This makes them pretty unassuming, especially for a wasp. Instead of a big, angry swarm, adults are just these cute little solo guys who fly around drinking nectar. It's during reproduction that things get weird. Braconids lay their eggs on or inject them into an insect host, which the larvae then devour from the outside in or from the inside out. Most braconids parasitize caterpillars, but some species target other insect hosts as well. After the wasp larvae eat their fill of their unlucky living nursery, they pupate, often right on the host's corpse, and then emerge as adults. But as fascinatingly horrifying as the parasitoid life cycle may be, it isn't the symbiotic relationship we really care about in this episode. What about those viruses we mentioned earlier? Well, parasitoid wasps have to do all kinds of strange stuff to get away with their invasive egg laying, starting with using venom. Stingers are, after all, a modified version of the organ wasps use to lay their eggs, called an ovipositor, so they can serve both purposes. Wasps that lay their eggs on the outside of the host use their venom to slow it down or get it to hold still, either long enough for the egg-laying process or for the entire development of their offspring. But species that lay their eggs inside the host have even bigger obstacles. Insects tend not to be super interested in being slowly consumed from the inside, so their immune systems fight back against these wasp invaders. And chemical compounds in the wasp's venom have often specifically adapted to counter these defenses. But in addition to venom, several subfamilies of braconids also inject viruses when laying their eggs, and the viruses play a key role in stopping the host's immune response. And if that wasn't bizarre enough, these braconids actually make the viruses they inject in their own bodies, using virus DNA that's fully integrated into their own. The wasps are literally manufacturing whole viruses for their own use. Instead of the virus replicating itself, the wasps are doing it for them. And the way that works is scattered throughout the DNA of these wasps are the genes for assembling virus protein shells, separated from the viral genes that go inside them. Cells in a special compartment of the female wasp's ovaries express the genes for making the virus protein shells, producing the empty containers that will hold the DNA for infectiousness. These wasp cells also copy the genes for acting like a virus, and then store those copies as little DNA rings inside the viral protein cases. In a normal virus, these steps would all be done by the virus. But in this case, the wasps are the biological copy machine making both the inside and outside of the virus, then stapling those two together. This process destroys the specialized cells, but releases a high concentration of newly minted viruses into the wasp's oviduct, which can then be injected along with the venom and an egg or two into the unsuspecting caterpillar. Then, the viruses run interference on the insect's equivalent of white blood cells, keeping them from encapsulating the wasp eggs. And eventually, the larvae hatch and grow uninterrupted by pesky bodily defenses. These wasp-made viruses have the basic characteristics of a typical virus. They infect host immune cells and contain the genetic tools to disable those cells, but they don't have the ability to make more of themselves. The genes for that are kept exclusively by the wasps. And yes, all of this is as incredibly bizarre as it sounds. So how did it evolve? Viruses make evolution extra interesting in two ways. They evolve quickly, and they're just weird overall. They replicate much faster than most other organisms, so mutations can lead to big adaptive changes in relatively little time, which is made even easier by how simple viruses are. They're effectively just genes in a protein carrying case. That to-go box of DNA or RNA contains the instructions to make copies of itself, and to do so by any means necessary, because viruses don't actually have any of the tools or raw materials to replicate, just the manual. Instead, they hijack living cells and forcibly turn them into virus factories, using up the cell's resources from the inside until they die and release all the virus copies. In other words, parasitoidism on a much tinier scale. The viruses associated with wasps are a group called polydnaviruses, and their entire genome is inside the wasp's genome. The virus only exists when a wasp expresses the viral genes. But harboring secret virus DNA is a lot more common than you might think. 8% of our genome is left over from old viruses, and as much as 40% on top of that might also have similar origins. The ancestors of all living things got sick at some point in evolutionary history, and when viruses are the culprits, their unique nature can leave a mark. In certain cases, after infecting a cell, a virus may incorporate its genes into those of the host cell without immediately switching on the copy function. Sometimes the cell just dies. Sometimes it slowly puts out a small but steady supply of infectious virus copies. Sometimes it starts dividing out of control and forms tumors. And sometimes that virus DNA stays put without actually doing anything. Host cells are constantly fighting all of the nastier of these potential outcomes, while viruses are driven by selective pressure towards workarounds. So when viruses succeed in both sticking around in a long-term capacity and successfully pulling the cellular levers, this can actually lead to both parties benefiting. Sometimes it's as simple as the virus's own tools helping the host fight off other viral infections. Or it can go the direction of the wasp polydnaviruses. They're believed to have evolved from a group of viruses that sometimes target insect reproductive systems, using very similar tools to the ones that Braconid's little helpers use on caterpillar immune cells today. So, wasp genetic repair mechanisms and other tools in the arms race against viral infection may have led to Braconid's ancestors dispersing the virus genes across their own genomes. By separating the genes for doing infectious virus stuff from the genes for actually building more virus proteins, the wasps essentially domesticated the virus. It can't infect the wasps if it can't spread for itself. In turn, the virus's pathogenic tendencies, when turned on the wasp's hosts, proved to be a major selective advantage, so the partnership became locked in. Cooler still, the viruses now even seem to have some wasp genes mixed into their immune suppression toolkit for good measure. There's no virus without the wasp, and no wasp babies without protection from the virus, meaning some truly baked-in mutualism. Mutualism of one parasitoid inside another, in turn working together in a shared host. Think of it as a game recognizes game turducken of parasitism. Evolution favors survival and reproductive strategies that just work, no matter how bizarre or convoluted they might seem. In that context, parasitism makes sense. It's certainly easier to survive by letting a host do all the heavy lifting. This helps explain why parasitism has evolved more often than any other life history strategy, and why parasites make up around half of all known species. A relationship as complex as the one between today's beasts and polydnaviruses may sound unlikely at first blush, but it ticks that basic evolutionary box of, yep, that technically works. With so many parasites around, some were bound to join forces eventually. And tiny invaders gaining crucial functions inside of cells is a tale as old as time. Just ask your mitochondria. Sign up for the Pin Club at bzarbyshow.com and help keep this channel going. If you want a wasp to be your first pin, sign up by March 20th.
Are there Bizarre Beast pins that you missed the first time around? Well, every now and then we double check our inventory and find that we have a few pins left from episodes in the past. You could check out bzarbyshow.com for these past pins. We might just have the ones you're missing.
And now for some bonus facts. Braconids aren't the only wasps known for eating their childhood home to death. There's also Ichnimonidae, the most diverse family of wasps on the planet, and they have their very own viral assistants for their parasitoid endeavors in 2 subfamilies. This is interesting because there are 2 main types of polydnaviruses: Bracoviruses and Ichnoviruses, each corresponding to the wasp family they're named after, and each with their own distinct physical structure and evolutionary origin. That is, Braconids and their Bracoviruses evolved independently from and convergently with Ichneumonids and their Ichnoviruses. The latter share plenty of similarities with the Braconid Bracovirus setup, a bunch of genes for host immune suppression that seem to largely come from wasps, and genes for making the protein capsules nowhere nearby, balanced out by virus protein structures that are very different. But Ichneumonids arrived at this completely separately from the beasts we already discussed today. So as rare as this mutualism may be in nature, it also managed to fully evolve twice. Studies on this wasp family are still pretty new compared to those with Braconidae, so it's likely that we'll discover many more wasp species with this amazing adaptation. But no matter how many instances we find, it's still going to be pretty bizarre.